everyone, this is going to be the first in a new series that I'm going to be doing called the Underrated Classics series. It's basically going to be focusing on books that are generally considered classics, but they are not considered when people generally talk about classics, at least not immediately. You'll see what I mean in a minute. It's basically that if you look at the book, you go, oh, that's a classic, but when you're listing classics, you don't think of this. And for me, the quintessential underrated classic novel is The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Emuska Orczy. I think I pronounced that correctly, not totally sure. Anyway, it is essentially the precursor to Zorro, which is the precursor to Batman. So that gives you a pretty good idea of how awesome the main character is, although he's kind of the main character in the way Sherlock Holmes is, where he is, but you don't actually see a lot from his perspective. Warning, this is not going to be spoiler safe, and with this book you really do not want spoilers, if you want to have the full experience. I knew beforehand and it was fine, but if you at all like to avoid spoilers, come back to this after you've read the book. However, there are sequels. If I haven't read those, you'll be fine, because guess what? I haven't either. I will eventually, they're on my list, but I haven't got to them yet. Anyway, so the general premise of this book is it's set in the French Revolution, or just after the French Revolution during the Reign of Terror. And the main character is an Englishman by the name of Sir Percival Blakeney. And Percy he's kind of an idiot, or that's at least how he seems. Most people see him as kind of this foppish idiot who can't really do anything for himself. And he's married to an extremely intelligent, beautiful, charming Frenchwoman. Now, he is a baronet, I believe is his title. He's nobility, is kind of the point. His wife was actually a French commoner. She was an actress. She was quite famous, but she was technically a commoner. And she was actually on the side of the revolutionaries, although not she wasn't an extremist. And her brother, at the time of the first book, works for the French government. Now, this is during the time when people are being executed left, right, and center, oftentimes for basically no reason, apart from you are nobility, so we can kind of sort of argue that you are against us, but not really. But anyway, so when this book starts, there is a person, no one knows who it is, called the Scarlet Pimpernel, who has been sneaking into Paris and rescuing aristocrats who were scheduled to be executed. And they escape usually to England, so it's widely known that he is English, or at least considered to be. I'm not sure how they know, honestly, although, yeah, everyone knows he's English. And of course, it is Percy, hence why I said if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this video, because that is a major spoiler. You don't find it out until quite a ways into the book. But a lot of the book is told from the perspective of Marguerite, his wife, who does not know that he is the Scarlet Pimpernel. So a lot of the drama in this book comes from her trying to figure out how to save her brother, who is being held hostage at this point. So they basically said, find out who the Scarlet Pimpernel is, or we'll execute your brother, because we found out he's working with the Scarlet Pimpernel. And so she has to figure out who the Scarlet Pimpernel is and betray him to the French government, but doesn't know that this Scarlet Pimpernel is her husband. So she's kind of stuck. So there's a lot of drama that comes from that, but then of course there's a lot of really interesting stuff with the Scarlet Pimpernel himself, where it's like, how did he rescue these people? We don't know, because he's also a master of disguise. So half the time, you don't know if he's in the scene or not. He could be, maybe, I don't know. You don't know. We don't know till later. But anyway, if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend reading this book. It is lovely. Also, it is probably one of maybe 3 instances I've seen where the central romance is between a married couple, actually. At least without having a prequel beforehand. 90% of the time, if there's a married couple in a central role, it's because we know them from an earlier book, which I'm totally fine with, but it's very refreshing to have one where they were not married in a previous book, but because there is no previous book, but they are married at this point. So yeah, if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. Again, this kind of spoiled some things, but honestly, even with this spoiler, I would still recommend reading it. Again, I knew who the Scarlet Pimpernel was before I read the book. There are several very good movie adaptations. There's also some really crappy ones, but there's a lot of really good ones as well. 2 in particular. The Leslie Howard one is amazing, and so is the Ian McKellen version. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I will see you later.